Welcome to another episode of Ignite, Empower, Transform. I'm Rachel Cheeks-Givan, your host this evening, and it's a very, very special program for tonight. It is our 8th anniversary of the National Give Back for Kids campaign, and this has been one of our most proud moments in terms of delivering this program on BronxNet. But tonight's even more special to me because we have a host with someone that I really respect, I have come to know as a friend, and even more importantly to me, she's someone that I consider almost like another mom, and that is Miss Evelyn Turner. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you this evening's guest, Evelyn Turner.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much for being here. This is special for me this evening, and I think our guests in our audience would be very excited to hear about who you are as a person, as well as all the great things that you were doing here in the community. So before we get started and learn more about some of the things that you're doing, just tell us about who is Miss Evelyn Turner.
Miss Evelyn Turner is a country girl. I grew up in Warren County, North Carolina, in a little hamlet called Inez. Warren County had this largest slave population in the state of North Carolina at one time. I grew up with a huge extended family, grandparents, my father, my mother, my siblings. I grew up in a segregated South and went to a 2-room schoolhouse, elementary school, segregated high school, and farm girl, loved the land, lots of concerns due to the segregation in the South. I was the one in the family who always asked the question, why? Because my father had migrated to Newark, New Jersey by the time I was in high school because he couldn't deal with the racism in the South. So I would always, I'd visit the North, I was in the South, and I always ask why. Why do white kids have this and black kids don't? And why is this? Why do I have to buy soda at the canteen and go outside to drink it? Why do they have 2 water fountains, one black, one white? And I was the one in the family who challenged my mother because I always wanted to taste the white water. And she said, oh, you're gonna get us in trouble. So I was that restless one of the 3 siblings at the time.
I just can't imagine what life was like growing up in segregation and having to deal with a lot of those situations. And I can only imagine, is that what inspired you to get involved in activism and in community involvement today? Do you think that's what really was the roots for you to get involved?
Well, growing up, I didn't know of any other life because we were self-sufficient. We grew our food. We had our own churches. My grandfather had a store. We took care of each other. We didn't have homelessness that I know today. Today, I'm a director of social service at a homeless shelter in the Bronx, Susan's Place. That never happened in my community when we grew up because we took care of each other. If somebody needed a place to stay, they had a place to stay. We didn't have foster care because somebody always took care of the children. So it wasn't as bad as people would think that it was, except we just didn't have the economic opportunities. And what happened with me and a lot of my classmates when we finished high school and then college, we migrated south because of economic reasons.
So who inspired you?
My father, my grandfathers, and my grandmother, Queen Elizabeth Turner, who would not allow any white person to call her aunt. She used to say, I'm not related to you, I'm Mrs. Turner. She was very sassy. She was a midwife for the whole town. She was always helping people. My grandfather was always helping people. And see, as a little girl, when you see images of elders doing things, you think that this is what you're supposed to do. So I just kind of grew up thinking that, well, I'm supposed to be involved in the community because my mom was involved, not as much as my grandparents. But, growing up in a community where you saw your elders being active in the church, I mean, it wasn't an option of going to church. It's Sunday, you go to church. You had Sunday clothing. And you took care of your Sunday clothing. And it was just, to me growing up, I mean, I was having a lot of fun. I recently wrote an article about May, because we had this tradition called May Day, wrapped in a maypole. And we had this big pole at school. It was segregated. And we would wrap it and see who had the most beautiful maypole. And the only thing that bothered me as an elementary student was the books. And I paid attention to a lot of things. We used to think we would get new books, and what would happen in the South is that the whites would discard the books and put new backs on them. And then the black students in elementary school got to throw away books from the white students. So that was that was something that I didn't like, and I was upset about it. And I just thought I was just, a stubborn. I used to be called stubborn. Oh, you're this, you're that. You need to, stay in your place, until I got to college in 1960. And when I got to college, I said, oh my goodness, I ran into a whole generation of young black students in their 20s who felt the same way I did. Like, we are somebody. Why do we have to do this and this? And why can't we have this and this? And why do we have to do this and this? And I was like surprised that I wasn't alone anymore. And my dad was in Jersey, and he told the family, when the civil rights sit-in started at A&T, I was at North Carolina Central University. He said, I know my daughter is going to be there on that picket line. I'm worried. I don't have money to get her out of jail, because he knew that I was a restless one. And when I found out that there were others willing to give up their life so that this generation of kids, black youth, could have a better chance at it, I was ready to give up my life, and I made that commitment. Some of my classmates could not survive the picket line. We had Dr. King came through, Ralph Abernathy. We had sessions on how to be nonviolent, how to willingly, you had to be committed. You had to say that if I have to die, I will die. And I made that commitment, that I would give up my life so that I could be where I am today and see your daughter and other little daughters have the opportunities that they have today. But it only happened after I got to college, because in the South, the elders were very protective of their youth. And and we stayed in our place. If we listened to our parents. When they said don't do something, we didn't do it. We didn't have, we couldn't call and report that we got a switch from ACS, because we didn't have all that. You were punished if you disobeyed. And so it was in that arena that I found myself, and made that commitment. Went to jail twice, almost got killed. I don't have a record, because I remember getting arrested in Durham, and they said, what's your name? And I said, Harriet Tubman. So I don't have a record. And when I moved to, it's interesting, when I moved to Co-op City, there were Democratic clubs. My father's a Republican, but I always been a Democrat, because my mom was Democratic. So they said, well, there's this club called Harriet Tubman Democratic Club and Eleanor Roosevelt Club. I said, I want to be a part of the Harriet Tubman Democratic Club. And that was the first club I joined in Co-op City, Harriet Tubman Democratic Club.
So talking about Co-op City, I know I've considered you the mayor of Co-op City. With all the work that you've done there, tell us what's going on today in Co-op City.
Co-op City is a wonderful community, and being that, let me backtrack. When I completed North Carolina Central with a degree in sociology and a minor in psychology, came to New York to get a job, and could neither get a job in a not-for-profit, because I had graduated from a traditional historically black college. And they felt like, I never forget, an agency felt that you may not be graduate material because you went to an all-black school. That was back in the 60s. Right. So for a while, I kind of shied away from grad school, but I was working with the city of New York, and I left the South, because the South had two pay scales, one for blacks and one for whites. So, of course, I came north, and I had my eyes on my future. My husband at the time too was a northerner. But anyway, so I get to New York, start working. And I'd always wanted to be, I read this book by Margaret Mead called Patterns of Culture, and I was always curious about different cultures. And I knew there was another life other than black and white, and there were other cultures, other parts of the world. So I learned about this profession called social work, and I was encouraged to go back to school, went back to Columbia University School of Social Work, got my master's, and my minor was community organization, because I love working in the community. when I got to Co-op City, it was just a natural. I had moved from New Rochelle, New York. I was very active in the community. We had a Saturday school for kids, and I was active with political organizations. So when I got to Co-op City, it was just a natural thing for me to do, because growing up, that was our civic responsibility, is to be involved in your community, give back. You know, in segregated schools, we were taught to give back. If you were college material, the teachers would say, they didn't ask if you want to go to college. They would just say, you're going to college, you're going to college, you're going to college. So they told my brother, you're not a good reader, you have some issues, you go to trade school, you become a brick mason. He's a top-notch brick mason right now in North Carolina, retired.
That's fantastic.
But that's, we didn't have labels, we didn't have ADHD, we didn't have Ritalin, and we didn't have that. We had teachers who would make the assessment and decide, you a college material, you go to vocational track.
So one last question for you. Just tell us a little bit more about the community involvement that you've had.
Okay, in Co-op City, 6 years ago, I started the first college and career fair, and it's going to be the 6th year this year. It has been amazing, and with the help of others, I couldn't do it alone. We have themes each year. Last year we had the robotic team from Morris High School come and show the kids robotics. This year coming up, we would like to focus on aviation. And I know the story about the Tuskegee Airmen, but I like to see the next generation of Black, brown, and other children, really learn to be pilots. I like to see more female pilots.
Awesome.
And so we're trying to plan that. I'm on the board of directors in Co-op City, and that's a very interesting experience. So the hot topic now is concerning the land and developing the waterfront park. So we got some issues going on right now.
So what do you want to share to our youth today in closing? What would you like to tell them?
Our youth need to know their history. Black youth need to not depend on the schools. Black parents need not to depend on the school to teach their kids their history. The schools have made progress, but in my opinion, they haven't made enough. But I think it's the parents' responsibility to make sure that the young people learn their history. Make sure you talk to the elders. I have an elder, 95 years old, and people are worried about, the world is going to this, the world is going. I call her, she's 95. I said, well, how did you survive when you were younger? How did grandpa survive? And we need to talk to the elders and learn from them, and that will help us, I think, today as we worry about, we have this government, we have this party. No, we can make it. We're a resilient people, we're beautiful people, and I like for our youth to just stay focused and just be, learn who you are and learn your history.
Well, thank you very much. That is such a positive message for the youth for today, and thank you for taking time out to join us this evening.
What if you could invest in the future of kids, like a stock? Not the kind of stock that's about making money, but a stock for social change. A whole new kind of investment called Better Futures. When you invest, it helps kids go to college. Believe in us, invest in us, watch us grow. My name is Sydney, and I'm your dividend.
Welcome back to another episode of Ignite, Empower, Transform, where we introduce our superheroes in the community who dedicate their time and energy to the betterment of our community and to our youth. Today we have a special guest with us, something that we don't get a lot of these days. We have Victor Perkins of Takeover. Welcome to the show.
Larry, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Same here.
Thank you so much for having me. I don't know about superhero, but
we'll get to it. You'll find your superpower in a minute. I guarantee you that. So these are what we're talking about.
That's the babies. We're going to talk about history, American history, Black history, our history.
Okay, so let's talk about the organization as it is today. Let's talk about it. Geared toward youth.
Geared towards youth. It's called Takeover. The premise behind the organization is something I started because I wanted to bring tap and tap history back to the youth, particularly back to Harlem. I've always loved tap ever since I was in high school. I had a close friend, Jason Samuel Smith, who was in Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk.
Okay.
My first exposure to tap and really getting into like Savion Glover and Jason Samuel Smith, Gregory Hines. And went to college, forgot all about it. Never really took a class. After I graduated, I always wanted to do it.
Okay.
Never had time. Went back to school, still didn't make time. It wasn't until my daughters started taking tap dance at the Millennium Dance Company in the Bronx. And I was so excited, and I started doing the research on it. And I was like, wow, there's so much history associated with tap alone, and it's our history that I was celebrating. I kept pushing them to do tap, and they looked at me one day and said, Dad, we think this is something you should do. Like, why don't you take an adult tap class?
Okay.
I was like, wow. So then I started looking into it, and I fell in love immediately. I started taking classes for about a year or so.
Okay.
And then from there, I realized it's not just about the motions and the movements and the sounds. It's about understanding where those sounds came from.
Okay.
Tying it back to our lineage, tying it back to how when slaves came over, their drums were taken from them, and the only way they could communicate was through song and through dance.
Nice. So tap was used as a drum beat, as a signal,
Right.
To communicate.
Yes,
in
certainly,
our culture.
certainly.
Okay.
And even if you look at the laws that was implemented in 1690, there was a law that stated that slaves were not allowed to dance. Dancing was defined as crossing your legs. So from a distance, they would shuffle their feet, keep it close to the ground, and that's where the American form of tap dance began.
So I can guarantee you that statement you just made, there are probably so many people in our community, forget
Right.
the rest of the world, just the rest of the communities, just in our communities that didn't have any idea that that's what that was about.
I even take
'Cause I'll
it.
be honest, I didn't know.
I'll take it even further. In 1828, there was a guy who actually saw a crippled slave that was doing the shuffles. He went up on stage, he put chalk on coal on his face, and wore tattered clothes, and he sung a song. The name of the song was "I'm Doing the New Jim Crow." That term was used to justify black code laws, which later became the Jim Crow laws that we fought against during civil rights. So all that ties back to knowing our roots, knowing our history that's associated with tap.
Okay.
I can tell you more and more stories, but so much of our history is tied into this form of dance that was founded right here in America.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So let's come back. The history is great, but I want to get to a little bit about the organization itself. So I read that you guys are involved with taking foster children,
Yes.
children in foster care, and introducing them to it and taking them on trips and things and such.
Right.
Let's talk about that. It's important.
So what we wanted to do was, I'm working with Jason Samuel Smith, my buddy from high school, and Maurice Chestnut, another gentleman that we introduced, Brene Ali as well. What we try to do is not just show them how to tap. We teach them the history, and whenever there's a tap show, no matter where it is, we try to reach out to different agencies that have youth that are in a situation where they need to be inspired.
Okay.
So Jason Samuel Smith had a show out in Houston, and we were sitting down planning what we were going to do, and he suggested that I communicate out to my buddies down there. And I thought, why don't I call the local foster care agencies down there? And I connected with a woman by the name of Tammy Ware, and I sent 10 tickets, bought 10 tickets to the show. She brought the kids, and they loved it.
Okay.
So now every time there's a show in Houston, we got Tap Takeover kids in Houston.
Nice.
Even now in Harlem, we work with St. Mark's Elementary School and Junior High School.
And where's it located?
It's on 137th Street between 5th and Lenox Avenue.
Okay.
So that was where we did our pilot program, where we call it Tap Takeover because we go in there and take over the school. So we had a DJ Vern came through, I had Jason Samuel Smith, we threw some boards down, and we just let them go to work.
Okay.
Now, I'm a tap enthusiast. I take classes, but I wouldn't call myself a tap dancer. I call
Gotcha.
myself a tap
Gotcha.
enthusiast.
So the kids they're not learning tap under your organization. They're learning the history of tap.
They're both.
Okay.
So after we did the Tap Takeover event where we took over the school for about an hour or so, we set it up so that an instructor, Jason Bernard, came back and taught them instruction for 8 weeks. We
Okay.
got the tap shoes donated to the school from Chloe and Ahmad Arnold Foundation. They're tap dancers as well, who did Apartment 33. They donated 87 pairs of shoes.
Oh,
so
excellent.
shoes wasn't a hurdle for the kids.
Okay.
Parents didn't have to go out and buy shoes. And later on, they saw that those shoes are actually an investment.
Gotcha.
So even though the school had access to the shoes, they took the courses for 8 weeks, and we taught them the history behind it, and they had some pride in what they were doing when they were performing.
And I like the fact that you bring the history element to it, because I think too often our children they take things and they don't things that are old or old school as they put them, and they don't understand where the foundation was and why it's there. And to educate them on that is excellent. I mean, I can think of myself as a little guy, watching Sammy Davis, for example, and I loved tap. Right. It was not something I ever wanted to do myself, but just watching and listening. Right. So it's good that they get to know these things, because we lose our music, we lose our everything artistic about ourselves, because we're throwaway. We throw away everything. We don't keep it to ourselves.
And that's one of the things that's so remarkable about tap. It is oral history. Mm-hmm. If you think about the moves that people are doing today are the same moves they did in the past. The same type of drop step that we do now is the same move that John Bubbles added to it. The way we stay up on our toes is just like how Bill Robinson's used to perform.
Right. And Bill Bojangles Robinson.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. As you perform, you start to learn these moves, and I think the difference between Tap Takeover and other programs, they teach you the moves, but without the history or the understanding where it came from, mm-hmm. you won't stick with it. Okay. If you think about it, every young lady, most girls that take dance, they take a form of tap. Okay. But they usually stop after a certain point, after that beginning stage. But if you teach the history of where that move came from, and they see where that move can develop into by seeing people like Jason Sammy Swift perform it and put his own style to it, they commit to it a lot more. Right. There's a certain rhythm that we have within ourselves, and when they bring out that rhythm, it's in everything that we do, from our music to our song to our dance.
So let me ask you, after the 8 week, how often do you have these 8 week programs? Let's go.
So we did our first pilot program in the spring. Okay. It went about 8 weeks, and then they performed the show at the end. Okay. Now we're working on the next, we call them intensive, that's going to hopefully take place in Harlem at the Firehouse. We're still working out the details, working with Brene Ali, where she's going to do 4 days of nonstop work with the youth, and then have them put on a show. So we're filling it out, trying to figure out how can we best bring this information and this history to the youth.
Well, you're bringing some now.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Here. How do the children or parents that are interested in their children being involved, how do they contact you all?
You can check out our Facebook page. We have a Facebook page, Tap Takeover. You can look me up as well, Victor Perkins, and I'm also on YouTube as well under Victor Perkins. Okay. And you can actually see the links, and I'll send you the links so you can post them.
And I actually did look at a few videos this afternoon to see what it was like. It was pretty interesting.
High energy, right?
Who's the brother with the really big afro?
That is Jason.
That's
Sammy
Jason.
Smith.
Okay.
He is phenomenal. They used to call him Monster because when he used to tap, used to break the shoes.
So aggressive,
so aggressive, and he studied he was in Brain Noise, Brain Funk, so he studied under Savion. Okay. And there's a whole generation of guys and young ladies that studied and have that art that are going around teaching in different areas. A lot of the classes that they're teaching are, people that can afford to go to the classes. We're just trying to break that economic barrier so that all people can be exposed to it.
So you guys in your organization in Tap Takeover, is it free? Is it a cost involved? Like what do parents need to know about?
So if you try to go to a dance school, oftentimes you have to buy a block of a certain number of weeks that cost in the hundreds of dollars. What we're trying to do is keep it affordable. About $25 a session, where the kids come in, they learn the history, and then they put on a performance. We work with the parents. We try to subsidize costs. We come out of pocket most of the times, because the key thing is we want to expose them. So in some cases, we do ask parents to contribute, because one thing I realized, if it's free, a lot of people won't take it seriously.
Understood.
But if you make an investment into it, you'll be more committed to it. Right. And then we reach out to our friends and families to obtain donations so that we can sponsor these kind of events.
Okay. And what kind of work do the kids do? Because I see my true belief is you can present things to children, you can teach them things, but if you don't let them see the value in it by working toward it, then they too will shy away. Right. So I think you need to put them to work.
We put them to work. The way we put them to work, the first thing we do, we expose them to it, right? Mm-hmm. They fall in love with it when they see certain people perform. And then we allow them to have the shoes, and they have to work at getting that sound right so that when they come back to it, they'll be more advanced in the classes. Okay. But they also have to study. They have to study the history. We give them certain tidbits of information that they have to present. Okay. So as we're testing their oratorical skills as well as their performance ability.
Okay. You guys ever consider something like introducing this to the Board of Ed as part of the core curriculum?
That is exactly what the ultimate goal that we're trying to work towards, is having it embedded in schools. So if you notice, a lot of the dance schools in Harlem and other areas have closed down.
Right.
What we're trying to do is create this virtual dance school so that it could be embedded in either history programs or music programs. So we will have a relationship with the school. We go into the school, we teach them for a year, they learn the history, and just be more educated and more excited about it.
Okay. So I mean, this is I'm excited about it. I mean, I could think, I remember going and putting bottle caps because I thought that's what they had on the end of the shoes, and actually I thought they were a lot heavier than this too. But this is pretty cool. So do you guys do any performances or anything like that outside of the?
We work with Apollo. Maurice Chestnut from Jersey, he has a program called Dance Therapy where he does a similar thing where he works with youth to express themselves via dance, and there's all kinds of dance. But Maurice Chestnut did a show over at Apollo.
Okay.
Sold out 2 nights.
Okay.
The premise of the show was beats, rhymes, and tap shoes, where he redid all the music associated with Tribe Called Quest.
Nice.
So in there, you'll see that Tribe Called Quest was heavy into jazz, and that's why he selected that music. And the blend between the old and the new, the jazz, the beats, people were so excited about it. I mean, you watch the show, you get chills.
Very cool. Okay, so I want to wrap this up. I would love to continue speaking with you, but in 30 seconds, tell me how you become a superhero, because you said you weren't at the very beginning. 30 seconds.
Superhero because we inspire people, we stimulate their ambitions, and we educate our youth and make sure we maintain our history at all costs.
There you go.
And that's the key thing.
That's what I'm talking about. Victor, it was a pleasure speaking to you.
It was a pleasure, Larry. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Ignite, Empower, Transform. See you next time.
Your son wants to get a cat, but you're allergic.
Maybe he could be an outdoor cat that lives in our neighbor's yard, 3 doors down.
Mom.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.